The brief introduction on the 3 defects of the pot, the conduct to avoid while listening to teachings, is done. Now, we'll extend the topic. The Indian sage Padampa Sanghi said, "Listen to the teachings like a deer listening to the music. Contemplate them like a northern nomad shearing sheep. Meditate on them like a dumb person savoring food. Practice them like a hungry yak eating grass. Reach their result like the sun coming out from behind the clouds." Through these 5 similes, Padampa Sanghi vividly described the 5 stages of hearing, contemplating, meditation, actions, and fruition, which are also referred to as view, meditation, actions, and fruition in other teaching texts. 1. Listening to teachings. Due to hearing the Dharma, we can establish right views. When we were just toddlers, did we have right views in accordance with the Dharma? Absolutely not. Except for a few reincarnated spiritual children who can recall their past lives, ordinary people don't even know any worldly knowledge when they are born, let alone the Dharma. Ordinary people begin to generate right views in their mind stream only after listening to Dharma teachings from qualified teachers. The world is filled with various areas of study and knowledge, among which we are fortunate enough to have encountered the Dharma. This is surely due to good karma accumulated from our past lives. Each time I visit a bookstore and see piles of books from different disciplines, I feel so lucky to be a Buddhist. I think there must exist a supreme cause and condition. Otherwise, how could I have encountered the great Dharma amidst the vast ocean of knowledge? I strongly believe Buddhism contains the most science-friendly, complete, and comprehensive knowledge in the world. It's worthwhile to dedicate all my time and effort to the Dharma. When you have the opportunity to listen to teachings, you should concentrate, like a deer listening to the music. This will be explained in greater detail later. 2. Contemplating the teachings. After listening to teachings from the teacher, you should reflect upon them word by word, phrase by phrase, and sentence by sentence. You should contemplate them like a northern Tibetan nomad shearing sheep. Northern refers to the areas around Yushu in Qinghai province, where there are many sheep. When spring arrives, the sheep start to shed their old wool and to grow new. A nomad will carefully shear off all the sheep's wool, never leaving a front leg or a hind leg untouched. In the same way, you should meticulously contemplate the Dharma in its entirety without making any arbitrary selections. For example, after hearing teachings on the preciousness of human life, you should reflect on each and every point and analogy. By doing so, you will internalize the teachings. To use another metaphor, it's said that the Dharma is like a piece of honeycomb. Every bit of it is sweet, whether the sides, the middle, or the 4 corners. You should not be like those who think some parts of the Dharma can be accepted, some rejected, and the rest put on hold. 3. Meditating on the teachings. When you meditate on the teachings, it should be like a dumb person savoring food. When a dumb person tastes something sour, sweet, bitter, or spicy, he feels mouth sensations but cannot verbally describe the flavor. Similarly, when a mute tastes sugar, he cannot talk about the flavor. Your meditation should be similar. For example, when practicing analytical meditation on the subject of the precious human life, if you just sit on a cushion with your eyes closed and think of nothing, you will not gain any practical experience of what you have understood intellectually. You should gain deep understanding through systematic investigation and analysis to get a feel for the precious human life. Only then can you say you have tasted the true flavor of the Dharma. Therefore, practitioners should delve deep into their practice. Putting aside for a moment the profound states of Mahamudra, or the Great Perfection, just steady and serious practice of the common preliminaries, such as the precious human life, or the principle of cause and effect, will help you attain in-depth practical experience. 4. Actions according to the Dharma. When you practice the teachings, you should impeccably put them into action, and you must do so with strong motivation. You should be like a hungry yak eating grass. Once such a yak finds a piece of lawn, it will devour all the grass without being picky, instead of sampling grass here and there. Similarly, when you practice the Dharma, you should apply each and every teaching to your actions, instead of only sampling part of the teachings. 5. Fruition, the end result. Here, fruition refers to the result of each meditation practice, not necessarily to the fruition of arhathood or Buddhahood. When the result of your practice is reached, you should not be in a vague or uncertain state. Instead, it should be like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. That is, you have truly obtained a sense of conviction, with no confusion remaining. For example, when meditating on the impermanence of human life, once you have truly established the view of impermanence in your mind stream, you won't be distracted by any view of permanence in any of your being and doing in life. All your misconceptions will be gone. This is like the sun coming out from behind the clouds and starting to shine. You no longer linger in the state of obscurity. In contrast, if a practitioner doesn't progress in hearing, contemplating, meditation, and action as described, that person will consequently remain in the state of obscurity. This indicates the practitioner hasn't yet reached fruition. Through these 5 similes, Padampa Sangye describes the 5 stages of Dharma practice. In fact, there are always profound meanings embedded in each sentence and each simile in the words of my perfect teacher. If you understand the teachings well, contemplate them back and forth, then your actions will definitely change. This time, I plan to teach the text meticulously. Despite the limit of my wisdom, when I studied the text in the past, the teachings resonated strongly with me. I can say that each word and sentence in the text has merged into my mind. Given that Chinese is not my mother tongue, it might be hard for me to express myself thoroughly. But when we together contemplate the teachings, my words may be inspiring, so they can help your understanding of the text. Among the 5 similes, Patrul Rinpoche further elaborates on attentively listening to the teachings and not on the other 4 similes. What does it look like when a deer listens to a veena? To capture the deer, one person plays the music instrument to attract the animal's attention, while the other person takes the opportunity to shoot the poisoned arrow. The deer won't notice the arrow because it is so entranced by the sound. In the same manner, when you listen to Dharma teachings, be it in front of the guru or through a video clip, you should try your very best to listen one-pointedly. You should strive to develop uncontrived faith and great devotion to the Dharma. Such faith is reflected in our actions and attitudes. When first encountering the teachings, some people cannot help but cry, putting palm to palm with pores tingling, as if they have received the nectar of immortality. From their eyes, sitting posture, and facial expression, one can infer their faith level. You should be like them when listening to any teaching from a Dharma teacher. In contrast, when listening to teachings, some people appear very reluctant, drowsy, or stare at the teacher with displeasure, or they hide in a corner beyond the view of the teacher. These actions are not appropriate. When listening to teachings, you should be light-hearted, listening with joy. As such, you may be more likely to accept teachings. In fact, a worldly student should be like this as well. If the student doesn't sit still and often fidgets or constantly looks out of the window or stares at the teacher with hatred, then the knowledge taught by the teacher will hardly penetrate the student's mind. When listening to teachings, attentiveness is very important because the merit of hearing is beyond verbal description. When a Dharma teacher is teaching, not only humans but also non-humans will come to venerate the teacher and the teachings. The Sutra of the Buddha, speaking of the unprecedented causes and conditions, Adbhuta Dharmparya, covers many types of merits pertinent to hearing. One of the verses says, "Hearing can end non-virtuous actions, so one can reach the place of the deathless. Sages venerate hearing the Dharma, so do the God beings. Hearing can end all our non-virtuous actions, so we can reach the place of the deathless, a place of liberation. Thus, sages and gods show great respect toward hearing the Dharma. God beings normally are prideful, so ordinary merit and virtue cannot easily win them over. But if a teacher is teaching and people are listening, even the God beings will come to show veneration. Therefore, before teaching starts, many Dharma masters of Tibetan Buddhism chant this verse from the prayer of good actions, in the language of the gods, nagas, and yakshas, in the language of demons and of humans too, in however many kinds of speech there may be. I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Through this verse, Dharma masters persuade humans and non-humans to listen attentively. Nowadays, there are all sorts of fans of singers, fans of internet sites, and so on. We practitioners should become fans of the Dharma. When listening to teachings, you should totally merge yourself in the teachings. By following the teacher's lecturing, naturally you are brought to the extraordinary world of Dharma. By so doing, you can receive the benefits from the Dharma. It says in Asanga's The Bodhisattva Stages, Bodhisattva Bhumi, concentrate with ears, venerate in mind, with a whole heart, contemplate the teachings you hear. When listening to the teachings, you should listen with respect and contemplate the teachings wholeheartedly. You should cut off distracted thoughts, concentrate one-pointedly during the 1 or 2 hours of teaching, and refrain from mind wandering. Otherwise, even if you are physically present in a Dharma class and appear to be following the teaching, your mind is filled with scattered thoughts, constantly wandering from one thing to another. As Drakar Lobsang Palden Rinpoche, 1866 to 1928 said, "It is no good mind wandering everywhere while listening to the teachings, and then remembering nothing after the class." However, some people with heavy karmic debts appear mindless in class. They are just as the 6th Dalai Lama, Sangyang Gyatso, 1683 to 1706, described in his poem, always visualize the face of the tulku, yet the facial image never shows up, never visualize the face of the lover, yet her facial image always reflects in the heart. Sangyang Gyatso also said, when quiet, practice shamatha, when in action, practice vipassana. Visualize your lover vividly present in front of you. If you are willing to put this mind to the path, then how hard can it possibly be to attain Buddhahood? This piece of advice is really worth contemplating carefully. When listening to teachings, you should refrain from talking casually. Some people are good at gossiping, but when it is time to explain the Dharma, they become speechless. These people chitter-chatter in class, interrupting others' hearing of the Dharma or receiving oral transmissions. This behavior destroys the virtuous root for themselves and for others. As a result, they will be reborn as parrots or other animals. Therefore, make sure your actions are impeccable during Dharma class. Many lay people are improving their manners when listening to teachings. In the past, due to a lack of Buddhist education, some people considered a Dharma teaching yet another town hall meeting, so they didn't know how to listen to teachings properly. Alas, it is not easy to change their conduct one by one. Around 1991, I gave teachings at a site in China's Sichuan province. About 100 listened to my teaching, and all of them had the defects of the pot, which was so disappointing. Nonetheless, in recent years, through our propagation of the Dharma, many people have become aware of right conduct when listening to teachings in Tibetan Buddhism, which is also covered clearly in sutras and precepts. Now they start to behave properly when listening to teachings. From their external conduct, it seems that they may have generated bodhicitta, or upheld the pure perception of Vajrayana. When listening to teachings, you should refrain from chatting, standing up, quitting for no reason, walking around, eating, and other inappropriate behaviors. You should even stop reciting prayers, counting mantras, turning a prayer wheel, or engaging in any other meritorious activities so you can concentrate on the teaching. Some Tibetan lay people don't know this, so when listening to teachings, they still turn their prayer wheels, which is not appropriate conduct. Although the merit of turning a prayer wheel even just once is great, the merit of hearing the Dharma far exceeds it. Therefore, make sure you concentrate fully on the teachings. All the eminent masters have mentioned this. You should also put away your mala beads. When listening to teachings, some people want to make the most of their time in class, so they recite mantras silently while listening or chant prayers at the same time. This just shows they are unwise and don't know the merit of hearing the Dharma. If they know that, they will understand that the merit of hearing the Dharma far surpasses the meritorious activities they are doing at the same time. So, while listening to teachings, you don't need to do anything else. When teaching the words of my perfect teacher, a senior Khenpo mentioned that he had recited a few 100 million mantras in his life, but what would make him feel certain at the moment of death will not be the merit accumulated through the many mantras he has recited, but through the Dharma teachings he had heard throughout his life. In contrast, some people, including a few from Larungar, who haven't received sufficient Buddhist education, are unclear about the levels of merit accumulated through various good actions. They consider reciting mantras or turning a prayer wheel very important, so they do so while listening to teachings. Such behaviors are not permitted during the teaching. Unless the Dharma master gives special permission while delivering oral transmission, you must remain concentrated while listening to teachings. When listening to teachings, some people may sit on a sofa with the left hand holding a mala, the right hand turning a Dharma wheel, eyes staring at the teaching video, and ears listening to the teacher's voice. They wish for all 6 sense faculties to receive the Dharma. But I don't think they are doing the right thing. When listening to teachings, you should put aside whatever other meritorious activities you are doing and focus on the Dharma teachings one-pointedly. You should listen while following a text. Some people just listen without checking the text at the same time, which is not appropriate either. While a teacher is explaining a text word by word and sentence by sentence, you should read the text at the same time, unless you already know the text by heart. But if you are not familiar with the text, you must read the scripture when listening. Also, make sure the teachings don't go in one ear and out the other, so that nothing is retained in your mind. After you have properly listened to a teaching in this way, it is then also important to keep the meanings of the teachings you have heard firmly in mind and consistently put them into practice. For, as Buddha Shakyamuni said, I have taught you the methods that lead to liberation, but you should know that achieving liberation depends on yourself. The best way for a teacher to train a disciple is through Dharma teaching. A very few teachers, such as Marpa of the Kagyu lineage, have put their disciples into constant ascetic practice and later gave pith instructions through various skillful means so the disciples realized the nature of mind. Nevertheless, for most Dharma teachers, the teacher-disciple relationship should be established through teaching and hearing the Dharma. The teacher must teach, and the disciple must listen to the teaching and put it into practice. This is what is called following the teacher. Not only is this the proper and only way to follow an ordinary teacher, if you were to follow Buddha Shakyamuni, the protector of the 3 worlds, in person, there is no other way. The essential way Buddha Shakyamuni benefits all sentient beings is through the 3 turnings of the Dharma wheel, not through manifesting clairvoyance or other magical powers. Buddha Shakyamuni told his disciples, I have already taught you the methods that lead to liberation, but whether you can attain liberation or not depends on yourself. If you don't put the methods into practice, even I, the Buddha with perfect qualities, cannot be of help to you. Nagarjuna also said, liberation depends upon yourself. Others cannot be the assistant. Throughout our journeys in samsara, we come alone and go alone. Dharma Master Yuanzhao, 1902 to 1993, a renowned contemporary nun, said, "Come alone, go alone, and attain samadhi alone. Practice alone, realize alone, and attain Vajra state alone. Liberation depends on oneself. It is not as some people think. Now that I am following you as my teacher, everything, including my living expenses, my body, and my realization, fully relies on you." Even a great master like Marpa didn't make such promises to his student Milarepa. A teacher takes on a disciple because the teacher aspires to help the disciple through the Dharma. It's never because the teacher needs someone to carry their water bottle, take their backpack, or fetch something. Such a helper relationship is not a teacher-disciple relationship. The responsibility of a Dharma teacher is to give teachings to disciples. This is except for a very few teachers, such as a certain Mahasiddha, who assigned hard labor to their disciple every day, until one day the Mahasiddha slapped the disciple in the face with his shoe, and the disciple attained sudden realization. Other than such unusual instances, generally speaking, teachers guide disciples through teachings. For example, the teacher teaches the disciple how to listen to teachings properly. Do not wear a hat, do not wear shoes, avoid 3 defects and 6 stains, and listen respectfully. Then the teacher teaches the disciple how to practice, for instance, beginning with preliminary practice instead of the main practice. Starting with preliminary practice is best, because when a disciple hears that the main practice is supreme and perfect, due to lack of knowledge, he will want to start from the main practice right away. The teacher must counter this by teaching him the sequence of practice. The teacher should also teach the disciple how to give up negative actions and perform positive ones, how to get rid of the 10 non-virtuous actions, and how to practice bodhicitta, among other subjects. The teacher should give these instructions one by one. Only in this way will following a teacher bring positive and effective results for the student. Some disciples have followed their teacher for over 20 years. They carry the teacher's backpack and travel with the teacher everywhere. However, the teacher never gives them any teaching, not even a verse like, "Avoid bad deeds, perform all good deeds." Instead, the teacher asks the disciples to fix a dharma hall, build a stupa, or herd yaks, just like a landowner treating his slaves by laboring them day and night. This is irresponsible behavior on the part of the teacher. If the teacher is a great Mahasiddha whose actions carry profound secret meanings, then we should not comment carelessly about that teacher's actions. Other than this, according to the legacy of Buddha Shakyamuni, it is through teaching the Dharma that a teacher takes a disciple. I hope that in the future, when some of you, the Dharma fellows at Larungar, start to propagate the Dharma and benefit beings in the world, you follow the right principles in taking a disciple. It shouldn't be like this. After conferring ordination on someone or giving the person a Dharma name, you announce, "I take you as my disciple, and you consider me your teacher. From now on, we are bonded with an unbreakable teacher-disciple relationship, so you must not offend me, or else you will break your vows." Alas, the teacher hasn't offered any teaching yet, so what vow is there to break? Nowadays, there are all kinds of strange phenomena. Therefore, when taking a disciple, the teacher must give teachings. It is only after giving teachings that a genuine teacher-disciple relationship is established. The above section discusses the responsibilities of the teacher. Now we shall talk about how a disciple should listen to teachings properly. As a disciple, the key is to remember the Sutrayana and Vajrayana teachings you receive from the teacher, to retain the meaning in your mind, and to put them into practice accordingly. Compared to this, other actions are not as important. In contrast, if you forget the teachings due to heavy afflictions, even if hearing the Dharma is beneficial by itself, this benefit is no different from that received by a puppy or a cat who stays in the Dharma hall when the teaching is ongoing. If you cannot comprehend the teaching's meaning, then the moment you leave the Dharma hall, you will have already forgotten everything, just like a piece of burning red metal turns black right after it's removed from a fire. In this way, listening to teachings won't bring any change to your mind. Therefore, when a teacher is teaching, we should appreciate and remember every word and sentence with great attentiveness. Great masters such as Patrul Rinpoche, Khenpo Ngawang Pelzang, and some Dharma masters of Han Buddhism had great faith in their teachers during many years of following them. Each of them saw the teacher as Buddha, so they considered the teachings given by the teacher extremely precious and tried their very best to remember all the teachings. In your case, if you cannot remember everything, you should adopt other approaches to record the teachings. For example, some Dharma students at Larungar used to audio tape all the teachings, so they had accumulated bags of cassette tapes when it was time to leave the academy. This shows how much they appreciated the teachings. But nowadays, some people are tired of listening to the Dharma. They consider the teacher an endless speaker, and they are always looking forward to the class ending. Such people can hardly understand the meaning of the teaching, which is no different from not hearing the teaching at all. You should understand that the fundamental reason to follow a teacher is to study the Dharma. As a comparison, consider the teacher-student relationship in a worldly context, such as in a university. It is never the case that the teacher says, "You are my student," and the student receives benefits right away. Even if the student is following a teacher as outstanding as Albert Einstein, the teacher-student relationship is meaningless unless the student learns from the teacher. It is the same thing when we follow a spiritual teacher. If a disciple has reduced their afflictions and increased wisdom through the Dharma learned from the teacher, then following the teacher carries true meaning. But if every day the student only runs errands for the teacher and obtains nothing from the wisdom mind of the teacher, then this teacher-disciple relationship is of little meaning. Particularly in this degenerate age, a Dharma teacher must propagate Dharma widely because so many people lack basic Buddhist education. Also, teaching Dharma doesn't necessarily require the title of Dharma Master or Guru. An ordinary layperson or monastic member can take up the responsibility as well. The Dharma is a wish-fulfilling jewel for everyone, so spreading the Dharma shouldn't just be the unshirkable responsibility of a few Dharma masters, but of everyone who aspires to protect and preserve the Dharma. Therefore, when the causes and conditions ripen, you should do your best to help all sentient beings through the Dharma, even if you don't have the title of Acharya, the Sanskrit name for a teacher or a master. Even if after giving a few pennies to a beggar, you ask them to recite once the name of Buddha Amitabha, this can be considered spreading the Dharma. Therefore, in our daily lives, we should all have the intention to protect and propagate the Dharma. To summarize, when listening to the Dharma, you should first concentrate on the teachings, then retain the meaning in mind. In the meantime, you should not mix the teachings with your negative emotions. Otherwise, even if you keep the teachings you've heard in mind, you cannot truly get the pure Dharma. The similes that go with the 3 defects related to listening to teachings are as follows. If you are distracted when listening to teachings, it is like pouring soup on an upside-down pot, so nothing, not even one single drop, will go into the pot. If you just listen without remembering, it is like pouring soup into a leaky pot, and eventually, nothing remains. If you listen with the wrong attitude, it is like pouring soup into a pot containing poison, so however delicious the soup is, nobody dares to drink it. You have to avoid these 3 defects. When listening to teachings, you should concentrate on the teachings, remember the meaning, and particularly you should not mix the teachings with negative emotions and wrong motivations. If you listen to the Dharma with the intention to make a fortune or to gain fame, then your mind stream is mixed with poison. Whoever listens to teachings with such a motivation is taking a risk. As Dogpo Rinpoche says, unless you practice Dharma in accordance with the Dharma, Dharma itself can become the cause of lower rebirths. If you practice the Dharma accordingly, the Dharma itself becomes the cause of liberation. However, if due to a lack of wisdom or faith, a person doesn't practice in the right manner, and even worse commits wrongdoings applying the Dharma, then the Dharma itself becomes the cause of lower rebirths. The Flower Garland Sutra says, if a cow is given water to drink, the water turns into milk. If a snake is given water to drink, the water turns into venom. So, when listening to teachings, we should avoid any wrong attitude. It may cause severe causal consequences if one holds on to wrong thoughts towards the teacher and harbors anger towards Dharma peers while listening to teachings. Such instructions exist not only in Tibetan Buddhism, but also in Chinese Buddhism. For example, Master Ji 538-597 of the Tiantai tradition in Chinese Buddhism says, generating bodhicitta for the sake of wealth and fame is the cause of rebirths in the three lower realms. Master Ojikshu 1599-1655, a patriarch of the Chinese Pure Land School, also says, the iota of error can lead to a difference as far apart as heaven from earth. If the mark of weight on the steelyard is mistaken, the finest cream will turn into poison. According to Master Uijishu, the Dharma is pure and perfect, like nectar and the finest cream. However, some people don't practice the Dharma in the right way, and then it will become poison. I have repeatedly stressed that it is not easy for many householders in a city to gather together. Therefore, please avoid wrong attitudes when studying the Dharma together, including the intention of making money through the Dharma, or becoming greedy, angry, and jealous when listening to teachings. When studying the Dharma, if you can first arouse bodhicitta, then carry out the action free of conceptualization, and in the end, dedicate the merit, then listening to teachings will render real benefits. Even if you haven't realized a state free of the three concepts, as Lala Chudzi Rinpoche says, you can concentrate one-pointedly when listening to teachings, abide by the right views when meditating, remain guided by kindness when studying or practicing the Dharma, and refrain from any discursive thoughts of greed, anger, and ignorance. This is also considered a practice without conceptualization. If you apply the three supreme methods when attending just one class of Dharma teaching, a class that lasts only 1 or 2 hours may help you accumulate great merit in this life. Through the Dharma, we can accumulate enormous merit, but we can also commit extremely heavy negative karma. Some people hold grudges toward the Dharma teacher when listening to teachings, complaining, "Ah, what are you talking about? It is always the same story. I don't want to hear." It is as if the teacher is teaching something unwholesome. However, when the student indeed encounters unwholesome situations, they are full of enthusiasm. When they see scenes evoking greed, anger, and ignorance on TV, they are very happy and enjoy them so much. Such conduct is the consequences of their previous karma, and they are committing wrongdoing with the Dharma. As long as the teacher is teaching authentic Dharma, even if they appear as an ordinary person, the teacher is indivisible from all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and there is no need to treat them as a bad person. The teacher is not coaching you on killing and arson, so you should not have wrong thoughts concerning the teacher. Not only should you generate no wrong thoughts about the teacher, but you should also avoid criticizing or abusing our Dharma peers, thinking, what do they know? I have a bad guy on my left side, another bad guy on my right side, a greedy person in front, and an angry guy in back. I am the only good person in the crowd, like a sandalwood tree among the plantain trees. Such negative discursive thoughts are the causes of evil rebirths, so make sure you get rid of them. To sum up, before listening to teachings, one must first clean the dirt on one's mind, like removing stains from a pot. When we remove the three defects of the pot, namely the defect of the overturned pot, the defect of the pot with a hole in it, and the defect of the pot containing poison, we will be able to fill the pot with the pure nectar of the Dharma. Starting tomorrow, before you listen to teachings, you should first check whether you have cleaned the Dharma pot of yourself. If the answer is no, then you should try your very best to clean the pot with the towel of mindfulness and vigilance. Otherwise, listening to teachings with great effort may result in great negative karma due to wrong attitudes, which is not worthwhile at all. Please make sure to adopt the right conduct while listening to teachings.